It was 6:45 in the evening and the rain was hammering against the windshield of my muddy pickup truck. I was parked 2 blocks away from the Crystal Ballroom watching the valet park Bentleys and Porsches under the glowing marquee. Then my phone buzzed on the dashboard. It was a text from my brother Caleb. Change of plans. Use the service entrance around back. And try not to look like you have been playing in the dirt all day. Investors are watching. A second later, a text from my mother popped up underneath it. Listen to your brother. Do not embarrass us. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. They thought I was coming to help with the floral arrangements. They had no idea I was the investor they were all waiting for. I looked at the passenger seat where a thick folder of legal documents sat waiting. I put the truck in gear. Drop a comment and let me know what is the pettiest thing a family member has ever said to you right before a big event. I want to see if anyone can top this. I did not text back. I did not cry. I did not ask why I was being treated like hired help at my own family's biggest night. I just picked up my phone and dialed Marcus, my attorney. He answered on the first ring. Execute the buyout clause, I said. My voice did not shake. It was low, steady, and terrifyingly calm. Do it tonight. Are you sure, Maya? He asked. Once we file this, there is no going back. You will own everything. I said, do it. I hung up and sat there in the silence of the cab listening to the rain. People talk about heartbreak like it is a loud, shattering thing. But it is not. When you finally realize your family does not love you only what you can do for them, it is quiet. It is like a switch flipping in a dark room. 1 second you are trying to find the light, and the next you realize you are better off in the dark. 8 months ago, my life changed in a way they could not even comprehend. I bought a lottery ticket at a gas station after a 14-hour shift, landscaping a municipal park in the freezing rain. I scratched it off with a trowel I had in my pocket. $18.5 million. I did not scream. I did not call anyone. I sat on the tailgate of my truck and ate a cold sandwich. Everyone thinks winning the lottery is about buying yachts and mansions, but for me it was about something else entirely. It was about FU money. See, real wealth isn't about what you can buy, it is about what you can refuse. It is the ability to walk away from a toxic situation without looking back. It is the power to say no to people who have treated you like an option for your entire life. I called it the Great Filter. The money was not going to change me, but it was definitely going to reveal who everyone else really was. For 8 months I kept my mouth shut. I drove the same beat-up truck. I wore the same work boots. I lived in the same small rental near the nursery. I wanted to see if they loved Maya the sister, or if they would only love Maya the millionaire. I got my answer 3 months ago, and tonight I was going to give them theirs. To understand why I hid $18 million from my own flesh and blood, you have to understand the ecosystem I grew up in. In every family like ours, roles are assigned at birth, and they are written in stone. Caleb was the golden child. He was the firstborn son, the handsome face, the one my parents pinned all their vanity on. When he wanted to start a luxury home staging business, my father remortgaged the house to rent him a downtown office with glass walls and Italian furniture. They bought him the suit before he had even landed a client. Then there was Jaden, the noisy problem. He was always in some kind of trouble, always needing bail money or a lawyer demanding attention simply by being a disaster. And then there was me. I was not the black sheep. Black sheep get attention even if it is negative. I was the glass child. People looked right through me to see the others. I was functional, transparent, and utterly ignored. While Caleb played CEO in an office my parents paid for, I was 18 years old digging irrigation trenches in freezing mud to start my landscape architecture business. I bought my first truck with tips I saved from mowing lawns. When I landed my first municipal contract to design a city park, my parents did not even look up from their phones. They were too busy liking Caleb's Facebook post about a visionary napkin sketch he had made at lunch. Growing up as a glass child does something to your psychology. At first it hurts. You scream for them to see you, but eventually you stop screaming and you start watching. You learn to be silent. You learn that being invisible is actually a superpower, because when people do not think you are in the room, they show you exactly who they are. I knew that if I told them about the money, the glass would shatter. Suddenly they would see me, but they would not see Maya, the sister who loves plants and works hard. They would see Maya, the ATM. They would see a resource to be mined until it was empty. I did not want to be their resource. I wanted to be their judge, so I stayed in the dirt and I waited for the perfect moment to test the soil. The test happened 3 months ago. It was a simple setup, but it revealed everything I needed to know. I fabricated a crisis. I told them that the main irrigation pump at my nursery had blown during a heat wave, and that I was at risk of losing my entire stock of rare Japanese maples. I told them I needed a loan of $4,800, not a gift. A loan. I even offered to sign a promissory note with interest. I went to my parents first. They sat me down in their kitchen, which had just been remodeled with marble countertops, and gave me a 20-minute lecture on fiscal responsibility. My father looked me in the eye and said, "Maya, if your business cannot survive a rainy day, maybe it is not a real business. We can't enable bad habits." This coming from the man who was secretly paying the lease on Caleb's Range Rover. Then I went to Caleb. I called him desperate pleading. He laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, just a dismissive one, like I had told him a joke he didn't quite get. $4,000, that is a lot of money for playing in the dirt, Maya, he said. Look, I can't lend you cash. My capital is tied up in big projects. But tell you what, I need someone to haul away the debris from a staging site in the hills. The trash is ruining the aesthetic. If you bring your truck and clear the garbage, I will pay you $200. Just try not to track mud into the house. He offered me a job hauling his trash while my business was supposedly dying. I hung up the phone. 2 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw it. Caleb posted a photo. He was on a yacht in Tulum holding a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than my weekly food budget. The caption read, "Work hard, play hard. Another successful quarter." I did the math. The flight, the hotel, the yacht rental, that weekend trip cost at least $15,000. He had $15,000 to blow on appearances, but he couldn't lend his sister $4,000 to save her livelihood. But that wasn't the part that broke me. The part that broke me was Elena. My sister, a single mom struggling to pay rent on a graphic designer's freelance salary, showed up at my nursery that night. She didn't have $4,000. She handed me an envelope with $85 in cash inside. "It's my grocery budget for the week," she said, looking at the floor. "I know it's not enough, but maybe it buys a part, and I can come help you carry water buckets if the pumps are down. I have 2 hands." I looked at the $85 in my hand. It felt heavier than the $18 million in my bank account. That $85 was everything she had. Caleb's rejection was an insult, but Elena's sacrifice was a revelation. It clarified the battlefield. I wasn't just going to take Caleb down for me. I was going to take him down for her. After the pump incident, I stopped playing the victim. I stopped asking for help, and I started helping strategically. I set up a shell corporation called Verdant Holdings. I hired a team of high-end corporate lawyers who specialized in distressed assets. They approached Caleb with a proposition. An anonymous angel investor was interested in his brand. They told him the investor saw potential in his vision but needed to conduct a full audit of his financials before cutting a check. Caleb predictably took the bait hook, line, and sinker. He didn't ask hard questions about who the investor was. He was too busy flattering himself, probably thinking his genius had finally been recognized. He signed the non-disclosure agreements and handed over his books without hesitation. I remember sitting in my lawyer's conference room staring at the digital files on the screen. I wasn't looking at a business. I was looking at a bonfire. The financial records were a masterclass in incompetence. Caleb was bleeding cash. He was 3 months behind on payments to his furniture vendors, but he was current on a $5,000 a month retainer for a personal branding consultant. He had unpaid invoices from contractors, but he had just signed a lease on a new company, Porsche. It was the Dunning-Kruger effect in real time. Caleb was so incompetent that he lacked the cognitive ability to realize how incompetent he was. He truly believed that success looked like a sleek logo and a corner office. He didn't understand that real business is boring. It is cash flow, margin analysis, and paying your debts. He mistook the safety net my parents had provided for his own ability to fly. He wasn't just unlucky, he was a hollow shell of a businessman rotting from the inside out, and I was about to buy the rot. I was ready to buy his debt just to teach him a lesson in humility. But then, deep in the revenue logs, I found something that turned this from a rescue mission into an execution. I found a recurring revenue stream that accounted for nearly 40% of his income. It was listed under a generic client code. When I cross-referenced the invoices with the bank deposits, my blood went cold. I was the client. For the last 2 years, I had been using another small LLC to anonymously hire Caleb for small, easy staging jobs. I did it to keep him afloat, mostly so he wouldn't drain my parents' retirement fund or borrow money from Elena. I was the silent hand keeping the lights on in his glass office. But as I looked at the invoices, I saw the dates. He had billed my LLC for emergency staging services on dates when I knew for a fact he was in Vegas or Cabo. He had inflated material costs by 300%. He was charging me for high-end Italian leather and delivering IKEA knockoffs. He wasn't just a bad businessman. He was a fraud. He was stealing from the very hand that was secretly feeding him. That was the moment the last thread of sisterly guilt snapped. If he was willing to defraud a client he thought was a stranger, he had no code. There was no morality there, only appetite. I picked up the phone and called Marcus. "Forget the partnership offer," I said. "Buy the debt. Buy the lease. Buy the outstanding loans from the vendors. I don't want a stake in the company. I want to own the air he breathes." "We can have the papers ready by Friday," Marcus said. "Good," I replied. "Because Friday is his big gala. And I think it is time the new owner made an appearance." The ballroom was freezing, chilled to perfection to keep the champagne cold and the guests comfortable. I walked through the front double doors at 8:15 sharp. I wasn't wearing my work boots or my Carhartt jacket. I was wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than Caleb's car lease, and my hair was slicked back sharp enough to cut glass. Caleb was on stage holding a microphone, basking in the applause of a room full of people he owed money to. He saw me enter, and his smile faltered. He practically jumped off the stage and intercepted me by the hors d'oeuvres table. "Are you insane?" he hissed, grabbing my elbow. "I told you to use the service entrance. And what are you wearing? You look like an undertaker. Get out before the representative from Verdant Holdings arrives." I pulled my arm away. "The representative is here, Caleb." He looked around me, confused. "Where?" "You're looking at her." I didn't wait for it to sink in. I walked past him, climbed the stairs to the stage, and tapped the microphone. The feedback squeal silenced the room. Marcus, right on cue, connected his tablet to the projector system. Behind me, the massive logo of Caleb's company disappeared, replaced by a stark black and white legal document, notice of debt acquisition and transfer of ownership. "Good evening," I said. My voice was calm, echoing off the high ceilings. "I'm Maya. Most of you know me as Caleb's sister, the gardener, but as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, I am also the owner of Verdant Holdings, the sole creditor of this company." The room went dead silent. You could hear the ice melting in the buckets. Caleb stood frozen on the floor, his face draining of color. "We have acquired 100% of the outstanding debt, the lease on this building, and the intellectual property rights to the brand," I continued. "Which means I am now the principal owner." I looked down at Caleb. He was trembling. "This is a hostile takeover," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You can't do this." "It's not hostile, Caleb. It's business. You were bankrupt. I saved the company. But restructuring is necessary." Effective immediately, Elena is the new creative director. Her eye for detail is the only honest thing this family has produced in years. Elena covered her mouth with her hands. "As for the former CEO," I said, looking back at Caleb, "there is a position open. We need a junior logistics coordinator. Duties include inventory management and waste disposal." I reached under the podium and pulled out a roll of heavy-duty trash bags I had stashed there earlier. I tossed them off the stage. They landed at Caleb's Italian leather shoes with a heavy thud. "You wanted to keep the aesthetic clean, Caleb. Start with your desk. You have an hour to clear your personal effects." Caleb didn't take the job. He stormed out of the gala and tried to sue me the next morning. But once Marcus sent over the evidence of the fraudulent invoices, the phantom client billing, Caleb dropped the lawsuit. He knew that if he pushed it, he wouldn't just be unemployed, he would be in prison. He disappeared from social media. The last I heard, he was working sales for a mid-tier pool installation company 2 towns over, driving a used sedan. My parents were a different story. They called me screaming, calling me a traitor, a snake, a destroyer of families. They threatened to disown me, which was ironic considering they had never really owned me to begin with. I didn't scream back. I simply bought the mortgage on their house from the bank. I let them keep living there. I wasn't going to put my elderly parents on the street, but I structured it as a lease. They live there rent-free on my charity with a clause that says the lease can be terminated if they harass the landlord. They stopped screaming pretty quickly after that. They are safe, but they have no power. And for people like them, that is a fate worse than eviction. Elena is thriving. She turned the company around in 6 months, mostly by treating vendors with respect and actually doing the work. She bought a house with a yard for her kid, and she did it with her own salary, not a handout. As for me, I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm sitting in my private garden, the sun just starting to warm the soil. My hands are covered in dirt. It's quiet here. There is no noise, no demands, no one looking through me. People ask me if I feel guilty. They ask if it was worth blowing up my family over money and pride. I look at the weeds I just pulled from the bed of hydrangeas. You don't pull weeds because you hate them. You pull them because if you don't, they will strangle everything beautiful you're trying to grow. It wasn't revenge. It was just gardening. If you had the power to fire a toxic family member without any consequences, who would it be and why? Let me know in the comments. And if you believe respect is earned, not inherited, share this story.